Welcome to Turning Pages, Manny. You are an advocate for mental health after divorce. I'm so excited for this conversation. How did you start this journey and why even document it? Because I've seen you that you're documenting your journey on social media.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Mel. So my journey started off because of obviously a very toxic, traumatic relationship. So just to give a little bit of background,
Mhm.
I'm from Canada and but my parents are of Indian origin. But I was born and raised in Canada. So I do have some of the like Western principles ingrained in me, but with a mix of some of the Indian cultural background. So it's two worlds coming together. Um, and a big part of like marriage in the Indian community is like you kind of like divorce doesn't really exist, or at least it didn't in the past as much. And now things are slowly starting to shift. And so I ended up in a marriage that ended up being very toxic, emotionally abusive. With There was some infidelity, and I stuck around in that marriage despite some of those things for longer than I should have. I just kept hoping that things would get better. I didn't even think like I could get divorced. I was like, nope, that's out of the question. I have to make it work. And I was doing anything and everything in my power to try and make it work. A lot of the effort was very one-sided, unfortunately, and in doing so, in all of the effort that it took, that's where all my energy was focused and not on myself. And as a result, I just kind of hit rock bottom. I was in like a horrible state of mind. And eventually, like one day, I just felt like I had nothing else to lose and that I needed to get out. Like it was like all these signs were pointing at me like to get out of there, like this is not good for you. So I decided to leave, but throughout this journey, I felt very isolated, very alone.
Mhm.
And um, despite even like going to therapy, it just still felt very isolating because I didn't know anybody personally or really well that had gone through divorce in my community. And so I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to talk to about all these emotions and things that I was feeling. And so after I left the marriage, I was like, there has to be other women like me. And so I started my Instagram page, Brown Girl Divorce, and I just started making posts about how I was feeling, how I felt during the relationship, the process pre and post divorce. And I was finding like there was other women that are just like me, that have gone through similar experiences, and it feels really good um, to have this sense of community now. And um, I want other women to not feel alone if they're going through a bad marriage.
What did rock bottom look like for you? For those wondering, like, am I mean, everybody's situation is completely different. We understand that. But what did it look like for you? What did rock bottom feel like for you?
Yeah, so rock bottom, it was a very slow kind of progress into rock bottom. Um, I was like crying all the time. I had insomnia. I wasn't able to like focus like at work. Um, I was just so out of it, like just forgetting the most little trivial things. Um, I almost felt in in one sense I was like overwhelmed with emotions, but in another sense I felt emotionless, like almost dead inside.
Kind of like numb.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and I just felt extremely lonely.
yeah. You said there was emotional abuse
Mhm.
in the relationship. How were you able to like afterwards? I know you had like you mentioned you went to therapy, but I know
Mhm.
emotional abuse, it scars us so
Mhm.
deep.
Yeah.
The words sometimes we take it as belief. So how
Mhm.
were you able to overcome that emotional part, like reprogramming yourself to say, okay, well, I am not what he is saying about me.
Mhm. Well, I think to this day it is still a work in progress. I mean, I've made strides. It's been over 3 years. Once in a blue moon, I'll hear his voice in the back of my head,
Mhm.
and I have to remind myself that that was his opinion and that is not me. And so I think now, right now, when that happens to me, I'm like, let's look at the evidence. Like,
Mhm.
for example, he used to love calling me stupid and mental. Um, and while I was in the marriage, like my mantra became, I am not stupid, I am not stupid, I am not stupid. As I was like trying to convince myself that I am not these things um that he is saying to me. Sorry, this always makes me a bit emotional because
Yeah,
um yeah.
take your time.
So um so I um and like that is so against kind of like all these like motivational speakers say, like you don't use negative words, you have to try and use positive words. But I was just trying to convince myself that I'm not stupid, I'm not mental, I'm not crazy. And yeah, so like right now I focus on the evidence. I'm like, okay, look, I've got this degree, I've had this career, I've made these changes in my life. I look at my accomplishments. Sometimes you need outside evidence, and it helps to talk to your family and friends, who tell you how amazing you are.
Mhm.
And you have to be like, who else is saying that I'm crazy, I'm stupid? Oh, no one else. It's just him. So that's one way I've dealt with them. And then another way was definitely through therapy and through like gratitude practice. That was a big like mind shift for me. I read like Rhonda Byrne's book called The Magic.
Mhm.
And the first time I went through it, I kind of half kind of put a half-assed effort into it. I didn't I was like, oh, this is like some hoity-toity thing. Like, I don't really know how this is gonna work. But I would do some of the practices just to be like, okay, I'm giving it I'm putting in the effort. Um, and then I was like, well, I mean, I feel like there's something in this book. Like, it does make sense. So after like a few months, I decided to give it another shot. And that's when I saw like a big transformation. And I was like, oh, wow, like there's something in this. Like, um, it kind of like the way it starts to shift the power of your thoughts day by day, just by like focusing on things to be grateful for, like ways to feel positive. And yeah, I think those are kind of like the big things that helped me
Did
change my
did you
mindset.
find that there was a bit of resistance when you started the gratitude practice? Like there was, I know for me personally, I've been through that and
Mhm.
I'm like, there was a lot of resistance, like at first. It's just sort of
Mhm.
like you don't know how to settle into it. And the the story that you're telling me of him calling you stupid, I had the same similar experience. And then I know for me, it was it's such a harsh word.
Mhm.
It's such a harsh word. And I remember telling a guy one time, I said, men need to be so careful with their words when it comes to women because we, whether they know it or not, we kind of respect them. We look up to them.
Hmm.
We sometimes, especially if you're not in your power fully, we take what they say as truth,
Hmm.
you know? So it's really hard and then emotions get trapped into your body and you're wondering, why do you feel stagnant or like you said, dead inside?
Hmm.
Did you have any other practices that you did besides the after like the gratitude? Do you have like a daily practice that you do to maintain that vessel that you've created now for yourself?
I don't have like a daily practice per se that I follow. I am kind of a person that's not great at necessarily following a routine. And it took me forever to even just get out of like the depressive state of mind I was in, with like the initial like PTSD. I faced a lot of anxiety. Um, but once I started to feel better, one of my like daily routines is like getting a good walk in.
Movement.
And
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
movement. Yeah, and I mean, I'm located in Spain currently, and it's such a great country, like such a walkable country.
How long
And
have you
so
been there?
almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so easy to get a walk in here, like, walking to the metro, walking to work, just like even walking the streets and admiring the architecture. And looking at the beauty all around. I like watching people, just observing, um, and just reminding myself to like slow down. Quite recently, I decided that I wanted a bit more structure. So I'm using a habit tracker to try and create these habits to include them into my lifestyle. And I'm just starting out with like 5-minute breath work and doing just like 10 minutes of yoga in bed, like before bedtime to
Yeah.
kind of put myself in like a rest mode and just trying to make small changes.
What made you decide to leave Canada?
So I was really struggling with working. I just wasn't able to focus, and I had taken even a mental health leave from work as well. And eventually I just got to this point where even when I tried to go back to work, it just wasn't working. I found myself like kind of right back um, to the beginning where I just would stare at the computer screen and not be able to do any of the work. It was like instead of like focusing on work, my mind chose to wander to all the negative things. Um, so and then paired that with like family, being around family had its ups and downs. Like, I moved back in with family, and it was one thing to have to manage my emotions, my trauma, and everything that I was feeling, and then to have to like manage my parents' emotions around my divorce. Because I know that was difficult for them too. Like I was saying in an Indian community, um, they're always like, "Oh, we don't get divorced, and what will people say?"
Mm,
And so, like they're obviously upset for their daughter, and that's not how they wanted her, like my life to turn out.
yeah.
So if it felt like a lot having to like manage their emotions around my divorce on top of like managing my own. I didn't need like their burden of their emotions. So I kind of decided that I needed to kind of do something and get out of here. And like one of the things was like, oh, I'm no longer married. Um, I don't have kids. I don't have anybody really counting on me. I don't have anybody expecting anything from me. And I was like, this is like a newfound freedom and luxury that I have. And what can I do with it? Like, if I had stayed back in Canada, I think I would have just eventually got caught up in life and got comfortable again and found a rhythm and never left. And I was like, now this is my opportunity. And I had taken some like high school Spanish, and I've always loved the language. I did some traveling in Latin America, and I was like, I'm gonna go and learn Spanish. And that's kind of how I ended up in Spain.
Dude, that's like your eat, pray, love
Yes,
moment.
exactly.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with the Indian culture as I grew up, in Malton and Mississauga.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes the West Indian culture is it could be very it's they have their similarities when it
Mhm.
comes to family and like this. Do you feel like I think you are the second Indian person that I've had who've gone on in a divorce
Mhm.
and she's just blooming, right? The Devanjini, she is a author.
Mhm.
Do you feel like, and then there's a few others that I follow on Instagram. Do you feel like the narrative is slowly changing where women in the Indian community are now having a voice and opinion and are basically healing generations?
Mhm. Most definitely. It is a very slow progress. Like I feel like unless it happens in your family or you know someone personally that's gone through it, you're still at the phase of like not accepting that. Um, but I do feel like there's a slow shift, and that's kind of why one of the reasons why I created my page was because I really want to change the narrative, so that people don't view it in a negative light. So people see it as something that's empowering, something that someone did for their own well-being, for their greater good. Like, um, I feel like so many women um, in a lot of Asian cultures, I feel like they've stayed in emotional situations because that's just kind of what was expected. And now that times have changed, like women are a lot more independent. They've some women have like their finances together. Uh, we've been educated. Uh, we've lived independent lives in between leaving our parents' house and getting married. So we've experienced a bit of life, and I feel like now we're like, well, I don't think this is acceptable behavior. Um, but I think it's a slow progress there.
What were some of the responses that you got when you started expressing yourself on social media? Did you, one, did you get backlash from family members? And two, what were some of the positive reviews that you got from other women?
Okay, so initially when I started my page, I did it completely anonymously.
Oh,
Yeah, I did not have my face on there.
okay.
And I did not have like any identifying information on there. I just connected with people anonymously. Um, so I didn't face any backlash from like the community or any family members. Uh, but in my DMs, I had so many women messaging me being like, "Oh, I went through the same thing. I'm so glad I found your page. Your content is very relatable." And then I talked to some women who were struggling with a decision right now, like to stay or to leave.
Mm.
And so they're asking me, like, this is my situation. I don't know what to do. I'm so confused. I'm hurting. And and like I don't really outright say like you should get a divorce.
Right.
Um, in most cases I do think they should, and I think um inherently that's why they ended up on my page, is because
Mhm.
it's something that's on the back of their mind, but they're not something that they're ready to accept or believe it to be a true option. So I kind of want to let them kind of reach that decision on their own.
Right.
But I do offer like, okay, so like offer them tips about setting boundaries, going into therapy, couples counseling, and I just remind them to be like cognizant of the things that their partners are saying and doing. Like, are their words and actions in alignment? Um, are their promises, are they following through with their promises? And if they are following through, are they sticking to it, or is it like in 1 week or 1 month or 2 months they stop and they fall back into their old patterns?
How long were you married for?
I wasn't married that long, only 3 years.
Oh, okay, that's still a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's still a long time. I say it's still a long time, especially if you're in a abusive situation, because that can feel like
Mhm.
10 years, you know?
Yes, yeah.
What were the early signs for you about your ex husband that something's off, that that you
Yeah.
needed to this is toxic, this is not healthy.
hmm So I think there was, like, obviously hindsight is 2020. So there was a lot of signs before we even got married, like while we were dating, that I kind of just ignored, or even if I was aware of them, I just thought, wait, this is the way Indian men are. This is
Mm,
just who they are. This is my culture. Like, this is normal. Because I didn't have any really good examples in my life. Um, and even like within the community, I didn't see a lot of healthy marriages. Like, there was a lot of people that showed their marriage as doing really well in the public eye, but like behind closed doors, there was all these problems. Um, and and as a result, I felt like I had accepted a lot of things that I shouldn't have. But some of the first few things that started to come to me was just he was always mad about something.
mm,
And I just felt like I wasn't good enough. Like, I was like, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, nothing feels right. I can't do anything right. Like, I'm starting to think like, what's wrong with me? Or like, how can I change? What can I do? And I was like, this doesn't feel, something about this just doesn't feel right. And so I'm like constantly trying to please him and being like, okay, what can I do to make it right? Like, I'd immediately panic. Like, as soon as I heard his like a raised voice, and
mm,
to this day, I do not like raised voices anymore. It sends my body into some sort of like
mhm.
panic and shutdown mode. Um, and and as soon as like I heard that like voice, I was just like, oh my God, what can I do? I'm so sorry. What did I do? Like, and he was like, you should know what you did. And it was always so confusing. And initially I'd always be like apologizing, it won't happen again. What can I do to fix it? And I was like, this isn't working. Like, no matter how hard I try, it's just nothing seems to be working. So then I tried to explain to him like, okay, sorry, I didn't know that you wanted it this way, or I didn't know like that you meant it, or that's not what I meant. You're taking it the wrong way. So I was like trying to like offer explanations, and he took that as like me making excuses. And so it just felt like, he tried to tell me that I was playing victim. So so I was just like very frazzled all the time. And then eventually I was like, something like isn't right. So I started to just shut down and be quiet because I'm like, there's no point in apologizing. I've asked him what he wants from me and he won't give me a proper answer. I've tried to explain myself, and that's not good enough. That then I'm playing victim and being a crybaby or this and that. And um and that's when I just like started researching about things and I learned the term like gaslighting. And I was like, wow, all of this makes a lot more sense now. And I told him, I was like, you're constantly gaslighting me. And he kind of made fun of that term. Um, and then I just stopped saying that to him. And he was like, oh, what was that word that you told me? And he couldn't remember the word. And I was like, no, don't worry about it. And on the side, I just kept researching gaslighting and what it meant and how to react. And that's kind of where I learned that it's better not to engage and it's better to just, I don't know what the
Hmm.
term, maybe gray rocking, where you just, or stonewalling,
Well, I
one of
know
those.
when they don't talk to you, when they shut you off, like so like they're upset with something, they'll do the stonewalling is like they won't acknowledge you or talk to you for like days on
Okay.
end. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
right.
happened to me too.
Yeah.
But I think it might be gray rocking, but I mean, okay, the term doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But um I I saw that when I wasn't giving him a reaction, he, you know, I don't know if it went well per se, but that was when he felt he was kind of like losing some control over me. And
Mm,
that um and then I noticed that he started to get a bit more aggressive, like because he was frustrating that I wasn't crying, I wasn't apologizing, I wasn't begging him. And he would clench his fists and he was like, "Oh, I wish I could just hit you." And he'd walk away all frustrated. Um, and I just thought to myself, I'm like, one day he's gonna lose it and he's
yeah.
actually going to hit me.
Wow.
Um, so it was just that progression of feeling more and more confused and more hazy and not knowing what to do and how to deal with the situation anymore.
Yeah. How did it feel like when you finally like when you met the Manny that is in love with herself? How did it feel like that Manny that was now she was promoting mental health, supporting others getting out of, bad marriages, bad relationships. Um, you were making, you still are making a difference in the world. How did it feel meeting that Manny when
Yeah.
you met face to face with her, when you embody that love and, because I looked at your page and I'm like, she's so confident. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's almost like fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just, it feels amazing. Um, and it's like, oh my God, I can't, it's like I sometimes try to take a look at my life from an outsider's lens
Right.
and and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what Manny does next. Oh, I'm so excited for her future and what she's
Yeah.
doing and like what's gonna be like in store for her. And so I look at it from that lens and like sometimes I don't even believe it. Like I'll have friends and family telling me like how courageous I am, how confident and brave I am. And I don't always like I'm like I don't know. I feel like this shy, quiet, reserved, people-pleasing person still. Um, but but sometimes we just have to like listen to what people around us are saying. And I remember when I like first got to Spain, because before Spain I was just in that really depressed state. And I started to just like dress up a bit more, go out, just enjoy life, make new friends. I started to thrive in like the new environment, and people started like commenting, like on my personal Instagram page, and friends and family started being like, "Whoa, you're glowing! Like
Yeah.
you look so different. Like." this is amazing. Like I can just see it on your face. And that's when I realized I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I like this new version of me and I'm excited to like continue and explore that. And yeah.
Have you started dating again?
Yes. So I kind of jumped into the dating scene pretty quickly.
Okay.
Um, but that had to do with my upbringing because I grew up in a very strict household, so I never dated in high school.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
I never even, I don't think I dated until kind of like towards the end of university. And so I kind of missed out on so many experiences. And and I quickly like met my ex-husband and he was kind of like I was married to him for 3 years, but we were together for many more years before that.
Mhm.
Um, and and so I didn't have any experience, and I just kind of wanted to have fun and go out there and go out on dates. So I went on a lot of first dates and I wanted to find out, I'm like, well, what do I like? Because I felt like I had um like by getting a divorce, I felt like my options were a lot more um like limitless now. Like I was like, I've done the traditional thing. I found myself, um, I followed all my parents' requirements. I found myself an Indian man, who is like in the same caste system,
Mhm.
and like those kind of things were so important. And it was like, oh, does he have um like where does his family come
Mhm.
from India, and so I was like, okay, these were all like the check boxes. Now I was like, I don't really want to follow any of this anymore. And so now I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, then my like I have so many more options. So I just wanted to go and see like what's out there. What do I like? What do I not like? And it was just like kind of an era of experimentation.
And learning yourself over again, right? Because you're
Yes.
just like for the first time, you're asking yourself, okay, simple questions. What do I like
Hmm.
to eat? What are my favorite foods? Or
Hmm.
what do I really like? Where do I prefer? Do I prefer a theater or a rock concert? So it's like really learning yourself all over, like meeting yourself for the first
Hmm.
time when you start that. But so you said you went on a lot of first dates.
Hmm.
Um, were you nervous at all, or you just went for the experience?
I went for the experience. I was excited. I was like, I'm not like looking to like jump into another relationship right
Right.
now. I just need to see what's out there. I mean, like, I had never touched a dating app in my life before, and I had some single friends who like I'd occasionally be like, "Oh my God, can I look at your app?" And like,
Yeah.
what is this like new technology all about? And like I see them swiping and I was like, I want to swipe for you. And I do that and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this for myself now and see what like all this like noise is about. And so for me, it was just like a really fun experience.
So, wait, there's the online dating. Do you like it or you don't like it? Like, what's your take on it?
So now I've had a really big shift in energy about it.
Great.
Because I had my fun, and I was like, okay, I kind of know what's out there. I've kept a really open mind. I've gotten to know all different types of men with different looks, different races, backgrounds, um, with different, hobbies and interests. And so I'm like, okay, so now I know what's out there. Then I started to kind of date with the intention of trying to find a relationship, whether that was like short
Mhm.
term or long term. It was just like I felt ready to be in something. I needed something more than just like a few fun dates. And so I did that for a while, but then found myself in a few couple different situations where I started to like someone, and then it just something would, happen, and turns out they're not looking for a relationship, or
Mm,
they can't see that with me. And like, so there was a like few mini, I'd say like mini heartbreaks. They weren't like full
mm-hmm,
on heartbreaks. And like, the guys that I did like have these situations with were very nice guys. So like they did, kind of break this to me in the nicest way possible. I mean, and I completely understood where they were coming from. And of course, I also knew like my worth, and I was like, I don't want to be with somebody who doesn't want to pick me, who doesn't, wholeheartedly want to be with me.
mm-hmm,
I'm not going to, beg for anybody's attention. I'm not gonna
mm-hmm,
try to change myself so that they'll like me. I'm just going to accept it. And it's okay if if it hurts a bit. It's just temporary. Um, and and then it was kind of this summer, I was thinking like, after kind of like the last like situationship, I guess you could say,
yeah,
I thought was like we were heading towards something very positive. Um, and you know, he started off by saying like he wanted something long term, and I was like, great, this is going wonderful. And I was gonna go home for a little bit to Canada, and I remember having a conversation with him, and he was just like, actually, I think I want something more just short term, so this is kind of
mm,
like where our paths will end. And I was like, oh, like really taken aback, because I'm
mm-hmm,
like, you did so many nice things for me, so many boyfriend
yeah,
type of things for me, and I don't understand. So I kind of took this summer to take a break from dating, and and um and I'm still on that break. So I like got off all of the dating apps. And I started to like ask myself a lot of questions. I'm like, okay, what is it that you want? And I needed to get clear about those things. And so for now, I've taken like a break from the dating apps because it is exhausting.
mm-hmm,
um the constant swiping, the like getting to know someone, the getting excited about someone, maybe going on a date with them, and thinking it went really well and it did, apparently it didn't, or maybe like they felt a really good vibe from me and they want to see me again, but I'm not feeling it.
yeah,
um and um and so I was like, okay, like I just need to slow down, and I want to get clear with my intentions and just focus on myself. And I think I kind of put making friendships kind of as second to dating.
mm-hmm,
And so now that this year, or well, after post summer, I've been focusing more on making friendships and creating a community, and I've been really enjoying it. And I am like taking a purposeful break from the apps so that I can focus on friendships,
mm-hmm.
and maybe along the way I can meet somebody like in a natural setting.
Okay, so organically, you want to meet
Um,
someone
yes,
organically. Yeah.
organically,
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, yeah, and so recently I went like on a speed dating
How was that? I
event.
saw you posted that.
Yeah, it was really fun. Like just how I described like going on a bunch of those first dates, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it's a new experience. Whether or not I come out of something with it, I'm gonna go and have fun. And I
Yeah.
think that's like when you go in with that intention, like I'm gonna enjoy this experience and see
Hmm.
how it goes and just have fun. So that's what I went and did. And I didn't like necessarily feel any like really crazy connection with anyone. Um, and and so I was like, okay, like that's all right. That was a fun experience, and I might try it again, maybe with like a different organizer, and see how their events are set up. But it was fun. And I even like got a few numbers, not of guys, but of girls. So I
Yeah,
like, made a couple of friends from it.
yeah.
So I mean, I think like the important part is just getting out there and having fun, trying to be confident, whether you're faking it or
Hmm.
doing it for real. And and then you never know what's gonna come your way.
Yeah, I like that what I like about your story and watching you on social media is that we know that you've expressed that you've come from this situation, this abusive relationship, this thing. And a lot of times, or oftentimes, sometimes you'll see women, they get stuck in that identity. So they do get the divorce, but they get stuck in the identity with the low self-esteem and everything else. But you have taken a different approach where I love seeing women take this approach where we're like, oh, life is, it's mine. I'm going
Mhm.
to enjoy it. I'm going to taste it. I'm going to experience it, which is a beautiful thing to witness because sometimes that, especially if you've been in a narcissistic abuse, it can damage you so much that you completely have lost yourself. And
Mhm.
sometimes it takes years and years. And sometimes you stick with that identity. And I love the fact that you've done this identity shifting and you've just, you left your country that you grew up in and
Mhm.
you went and explored and just the speed dating. Like, I don't even think I would ever do speed dating. But I mean, now that
Mhm.
you're talking about it in a different lens of like going for the experience,
Mhm.
it makes it sound a little bit more exciting. And you're the actually first woman that I've spoken to that is okay with like, I mean, you said now you're taking a break from the dating apps, but every woman that I've spoken to, they're like the dating apps, no,
Mhm.
absolutely no. And I think I've tried eHarmony for about 6 months and I actually got like no response.
Oh no.
But I was like, and then the options, I was open-minded, right?
Yeah.
And the options that were there and stuff like that. And then that's when I realized I'm like, online is not for me because
Yeah.
I had everything in my bio
Mhm.
and they're asking me the same questions over and over and over again. And I was feeling exhausted,
Mhm. Mhm.
but also I was not getting matched really with anyone. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take this as a sign as this is not my avenue.
Mhm.
God wants me to meet the person that I'm calling in differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a different experience. Do you think you'll write a book?
Well, so right now I took part in a book writing project that's with multiple women.
Hmm.
It's called the Desi Divorcee.
Uh-huh.
And Devangani was one of the editors, and another lady, Deepika.
Hmm.
And so I've penned down my story, and I think it will be released early next year. So that's what I've done for now. In the future, I don't know if there's a book in my horizon.
Okay.
But always like I'm always trying to keep an open mind and open to like new possibilities and exploring um, you know, anything like just I really just kind of want to reach more women out there. And
Do you have
hopefully even I was just gonna add that hopefully even reach out to women before they get married because
oh,
I do notice
yeah.
that, a lot of women are settling for guys or like seeing the red flags, but are so desperate to be married and in a relationship or are worried about their age.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, hopefully, if I can even get to some of these women, it will be so nice because then they won't get to the point where they have to get a divorce.
Yeah. Which is true that if they could really um find themselves first and watch out for things like that. But I think you're doing an excellent job by, telling your story online and even sharing information about, narcissistic abuse and what it looks like, how it shows up.
Mhm.
Um, because many people are gonna come onto your page and be like, okay, I'm not alone. And
Mhm.
seeing, even sometimes just seeing a post and you could be in pre-marriage and
Mhm.
seeing something like that can probably click on like, oh my God, like I can relate to this,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's really good that what you're doing. Um, how can people reach you besides your social media? Do you have any other platforms that you're on besides IG, or
Yeah.
is that
No,
it?
right now I'm only on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. But I am like hoping to expand a little bit. I'm working on a few things, and um I think in November I'm going to be like releasing a few new things that I'm working on.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
we'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
And I know you already mentioned the book by Rhonda Burns, The
Mhm.
Magic. Was there any other book that has inspired you,
Mm.
that made like a really big impact in your life?
So one was uh to s- to stay, or what was
Stay
it
or
called?
not to I
To
know the
leave.
book you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Ramani.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her, so I actually read that book after I left. But um I think like a lot of times when relationships end, we want closure. Like,
Hmm.
why why was he mean to me? Why did he treat me this way? Why did he cheat on me? Why did, XYZ happen? And you want answers and reasonings, and you're not going to get them. And so reading that book was just like so many like mind explosions. Like I was just like, oh, that's why he did that. That's why he acts like that. That's why he's behaving like that. And it was kind of all the closure that I needed. It
Mm.
was all the answers I needed was in that book. I could finally understand what happened in my relationship. I was finally able to see that all of these things were not my fault. And had I even like changed to be this exact person that he wanted, it wasn't ever going to be good enough, because his needs and wants were going to constantly shift and change, and he was going to expect more and more from me. So I think that book was just really helpful in understanding and getting the closure I needed.
Yeah, I remember the author saying that if you picked up that book, more than likely your answer is you have to leave.
Yes.
I read that book in my last relationship, and I remember looking at the title and I'm like, what are you reading? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was just like, okay then. I had a very hard time detaching myself, and like the truth is there
Hmm.
that you're like, well, this is the truth. This
Hmm.
person is, being this way, and it's hard to I had a hard time with accepting that, like, okay, fine, this person is actually not good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was thing. So that I like that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Dr. Ramani has great tips, even just
yeah,
a bunch of YouTube videos that are completely for free. So,
yeah. Did you did you find yourself at some point um wanting to detach from the self-help or self-healing thing for a bit? Like, did it at any point did it become overwhelming?
um, I don't think so. Like I feel like it's just self-help, like kind of it evolves over time, like as you heal. Like I remember like at one point being so in the dark and then like I'm never gonna get out of this. Like I'm always gonna be this um angry, grieving, divorcee, like this emotional wreck. Life is never gonna be great again. And so at that time I needed a certain type of help. And now like I'm in more of an era that I need different type of help. Like I need to focus on just I think like reaching my full potential and like realizing my worth and how to kind of reach for the stars, kind of like realize that my potential is a lot more um than what I think it is.
Mm. Right, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a great having this conversation with you. I can't wait for what you have in store in November. You said you're releasing something, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I'll keep an eye out for it. And thank you so much again for sharing your time, your experience, and your wisdom with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Mel, this was like such a lovely chat.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.